Welcome to the Las Vegas Open Live Lounge. My name is James, also known as Tattooed Tabletop, and today I am interviewing Stephen Box of Vanguard Tactics. Stephen, how you doing?
I'm doing great, James.
Fantastic. And for those who don't know Stephen, he has been the head of Vanguard Tactics, which represents sportsmanship and fair play in 40K. And, as someone who's had to experience it firsthand, it's incredible. So, Stephen, let's kick this off, starting right at the top. Sportsmanship. It's not considered a skill by most people, but what makes it a skill to you?
Well, I think when we take a look at what sportsmanship really is, it's that ability to navigate the situations where the rule book doesn't help us. The gray area of the game. Everything that confines the way that we conduct ourselves, our mannerisms, the way that we, project ourselves towards our opponent. So I don't know whether it's necessarily a skill, but I think there's certainly skills that can assist somebody to be a better sport. So, for example, communication. There are some people that are excellent communicators, and it's then really, really easy to help your opponent be a great opponent as well.
Absolutely. I think all of us can agree because we know it's a social contract when we step up to the table. And like you said, the skills that complement that ability so that everybody is on the same page. Which, in a tournament, let me ask you this. In a tournament, would you offer your opponent advice? Or when would you offer your opponent advice that might be to your detriment? Maybe it might kill a unit of yours or, put something in danger. When do you know to offer that up?
Well, I think, it's a really good question. Like, when do you give somebody advice on what they should or shouldn't do, and when potentially you are giving away too much? So I always think there's, first of all, that conversation that has to be had at the beginning of the game. What is it that you and me are both trying to get from this game? Now, if we're both in a competitive setting, I want us both to compete as much as we possibly can. So how do we bring the very best of our gameplay to the table? And I want you to beat me if you're a better commander of your army than I am. And I don't really want anything else to be the difference between why you win or I win. And equally, I am going to play my very best to try and win this game, because without doing so, I'm not going to give you the game. I'm not going to give you the mental challenge. I'm not going to give you problems to solve. So, I love doing escape rooms. And the most rewarding thing is when you finish because you were challenged significantly, but the escape room gave you the puzzles to unlock, right? So I think that's what we do. We play it's not a physical game. It's a mentally exhausting game. And you get that sense of triumph when you know the things that you've put in place, from list design to understanding the mission, really is what helps you be successful. So the question of how far do I help my opponent, you often get the question of, do you mind if? How often have we been there where somebody will say, do you mind if I do this, or do you mind if I do that? Well, again, I think that there needs to be some rules and regulations about when you use that term. Because if I'm in a place where you're asking me for either a go back or whatever it might be, that the mistake that you have made, you've identified you've made a mistake, or you've not communicated effectively on your intent of what you were trying to do at the time when you made the move, or you rolled the dice, or you positioned your unit in a very particular way, that was your failure to communicate. Now, what you're asking me for is either to be a bad sport by saying no, or you're putting me in a position where I'm letting you off the mistake that you've made.
Yeah, that kind of puts you in a tough spot, right? Because you want to be, like you said, you want to win this game by your own skill, and not by, as the term that I think most people out there know is the gotcha. That thing that you didn't tell your opponent, the communication. You want to be that best opponent, but if it's changing the state of the game,
yeah,
it's inevitably changing that result, thus not being, a true competition for it.
Yeah, so I'll give you a really good example. I played a game, round 1 LGT recently, and my opponent said to me, hey, would you like to terraform that middle objective? Now, my unit was just stood there, they didn't do anything, it was already terraformed by him, so he's already going to score the points if I don't do anything about it. And I said, no. I said, I really appreciate you offering me to terraform the objective. I said, however, when I was in my shooting phase, when I had the opportunity to terraform, I decided not to because I wanted to see what my charge roll was. And I said, if I let you give me the terraform, you're giving me an advantage that I shouldn't have had because I've now seen other dice rolls. So I said, no, I appreciate you offering, but I don't want it. Because I should have either declared I wanted to terraform myself or I didn't.
Yep.
And I think it's too easy for us to either let our opponents give us the easy way out, or it's also too easy to say under this like, oh, well, let's play by intent, to actually put yourself in a position where you're not making any mistakes. It's like intent is covering up the fact that there's no perfect game of Warhammer out there right now. Every single person here will be making mistakes at some point or another. However, there will be some players that will bend the rules of and push what intent really means. So I know I'm getting a long way around answering this question of how much you help your opponent, but I think equally they also need to be able to help themselves. So at the start of the game, if I was saying to you, hey, here's what my army can do, I'm expecting you to ask me a series of questions, and I'm going to answer them honestly and openly. And if I feel like you haven't asked me the right question, I'm gonna fill in those blanks, because I don't want there to be a moment later on where you feel resentful towards me because I wasn't forthcoming with that information. Okay?
Absolutely.
So not everybody's going to do that, though. Not everybody's going to freely give up all the information they have. Now, I see this game as I think that the information given in the codex should be available for everybody, and that before you step up to the table, something both players should understand and know. Now, obviously, there's so many rules in the game, you can never be expected to remember it, so it's my job as your opponent to help you. This is my army rule, this is my detachment rule, these are the enhancements and the stratagems I've got available. This is what my units do. And bear in mind, this is always a bit weird, but I can do X, Y, or Z with this unit, watch out for it. So there'd be typically things like anything that has a trigger. So you move within 9, I can move away. At the end of the fight phase, I can move away. Anything that is completely outside the normal, yeah? Or if I know that I'm up against a really, aggressive combat army, and I've got a really good overwatching threat because I've got sustained hits, full rerolls, I'm going to say, hey, watch out. This unit does have a good overwatch ability because it either does it on a higher dice roll or probability. I've got rerolls or I've got sustained. I'm not trying to deter you from moving around it. I'm just letting you know that is a good Overwatch threat. But I don't also want to tell you something that might be trying to gaslight you. And I feel like that is also a bit of an issue as well. So earlier you asked me, like, how much do I help my opponent? Well, I'm going to try and help them as much as I can before we start.
Yeah, you're going to give them everything they need to know. So then that way, when it does come up, you're being forthcoming. It's you probably at the beginning of their turn. And then if they, if they still commit to doing that thing, you've warned them appropriately, thus allowing them to make their informed decision. Yeah, now, also, like, I've had those situations where if I can see something happening on the table and I'm there scratching my head like, why have they done that? And I'll ask them, I'll say, hey, do you mind telling me why you've done this? And then they'll normally say, oh, because of X, Y, or Z. And I'll be like, right, I don't know if you've correctly understood the rule here, but you could do this. So, for example, played against somebody and they deployed their army out in the open. And I said, look, I think they were about 14, 15. I said, look, why have you, out of interest, why have you put the units where you have? Because I'm happy for you to change anything you want in your deployment. And he said, oh, well, if I put them here, I can't go through the building.
I said, you can because you've got an infantry model.
Yeah, information that they should have had before.
Yeah, I'm expecting somebody to have all this information that they should know the rules of the game. And if they don't know, I don't want there to be a moment where they feel like they've made a huge mistake because they didn't know one of the basic rules of the game. So I helped them out, they redeployed their army, we had a really great game. So I felt much better about that going into that situation, knowing that they understood the rules. So again, I think at the beginning, that's where we're trying to help each other as much as we possibly can. But equally, if I'll also have that conversation to say, I don't mind you doing something like a retake of and it normally happens on a move of a model. So it'll normally be, oh, I don't like the position there. Guys, feel free to sit down, by the way. If you want to sit down, take a seat.
Yeah, come on in.
It will normally because like they didn't move a model correctly how they wanted to, right? So I'll always say, providing that you or me haven't seen any information, like you haven't gone away and rolled an advance roll from another unit and you're now thinking about charging from there rather than here, or you know you've mixed up. Maybe I overwatched in a particular area. We saw the results and now you want to go somewhere else. So as long as we can precisely determine where their original start position was for that unit, and then if I say, hey, look, yes, absolutely fine, you can, remove that model, then I'm also expecting my opponent to be like, number one, I appreciate that, Steve, and number two, I am not in any way, shape, or form going to try and push my luck on how far I can move that unit, because you're never going to be able to exactly determine, unless you've put dice down, where that unit moved from. So if your model normally moves 5 inches, you go in one direction, but you're like, oh, I kind of put it back, and then you put it over here. You may have moved 8 inches quite easily. So now not only have I let you retake a move, but you're also now cheating. You've gained an unfair advantage. So I think that's like on the ownership of the player. I'm watching very closely now how they now behave, because this is going to set the tone potentially for the rest of the game. Do I need to, if I give somebody, that old saying, you give someone an inch, they take a yard, so how much are they now going to respect that? And would they also give you the same grace? And I've heard this multiple times of like, oh, I give my opponent one go back.
Yeah, just the one. Everybody gets one.
But I don't understand it, because there's going to be, where do you draw the line of what that one is? Now, like I said, if you ask for a go back, you are putting your opponent in a very lose-lose situation. You made the mistake, you probably should own it, because you're also not going to learn either. You're not, that mistake you made is not going to develop you as a player if you are constantly given the go back or the let off of that mistake.
The do you minds.
Yeah, now, I've played somebody before, they drew some cards and they completely forgot they maybe had a secondary. Like they need to do an action in a particular, area of the table. And we'll get to the end of the cards and they'll go, oh, what did you score? Oh, yeah, assassinate, yeah, definitely got that. Oh, establish a locus. And I'll look at the table and I'll go, well, is that unit within 6? And we'll measure it and it's like 6.1 away. And I'll be like, well, I'm pretty sure you'd have had the movement. You haven't done anything. I'm happy for you to do the establish there.
Exactly. The state of the game hasn't changed because they didn't do anything with it.
Well, and also, not only that, they didn't ask me. I'm freely offering it, and I'm freely offering it because I'm appreciating the decorum and the respect that we have for each other. That's being a good sport, but I'm doing that on my terms. I don't feel any pressure to let you have it. I'm freely offering it. Because you'll often find sometimes you play somebody and maybe you have made a tiny minor mistake, something to do with positioning or coherency, something extremely minor, or maybe there's that, we've all been there, swords poking out from terrain, and all of a sudden your opponent's like, right, I'm going to kill your whole unit now because your sword's poking out. I've had it before where I've moved and I've gone, just do me a favor, rotate your model so I can't see you. And they'll go, oh, cheers, Steve, appreciate that.
Yeah.
But I would also appreciate you to do the same thing for me, because I don't want to capitalize on the fact that you've made a really, maybe you've moved it fast. We've got 3 hours to play this game. There has to be a little bit of give and take. And I don't want to win because you had a sword poking out of a piece of obscuring terrain, right? I'm not going to feel good about that. I want to win because you challenged me in other areas. So, yeah, I think how much do you help your opponent? Help them at the start. If you know there is something, go, hey, by the way, or like, if you know they've made 2 charges, just let you know I've got 2 CPs, yeah? Because then you could interrupt. And they might go, oh, appreciate that, Steve, thanks for letting me know.
Yeah, I think that's a good rule of thumb. Like you said, if it's not changing the state of the game, you know, you didn't have a unit that shot or anything like that, I think you're giving them information that you gave them at the beginning, you're giving them the reminder, you're giving them the grace, but it's on terms of the social contract of the game.
Yeah, and it might be one of those things where they do something where I can kind of tell they're screening out the backfield. Maybe you've got deep strikers, and I'll be like, oh, why are you moving that unit? Oh, I just want to screen out the backfield 9 inches. I'm like, yeah, no worries. Well, my models are on a 40 mil base. You could actually do 10.5 inches, and I still can't drop in. Okay, cheers, Steve.
Yep.
You know, let's just have that conversation because it's going to clean up. I'm not going to then later on try and put a unit in. You know what I mean? So sometimes if you feel like your opponent isn't communicating effectively, ask them the question why, because you can help them out.
Yeah, and it's, again, you're asking the clarifying question, and you know, kind of to go off of that, you know, bridging that. Let's say you're getting to the end of the game, you've reached all the end, and you've won because you were the better general. You offered them the information they needed. I think this is also an important aspect of this game. How do you win in a sportsman-like way? You know, I think sometimes we get excited, we get, you know, emotions get high when you win a game, but how do you handle that when you win?
So I think, I mean, I've had this situation before where, put your hand up in the audience if you've ever lost a dice. Yeah? I mean, people lose to dice less often than they think they did, but...
You wait until you get home, right? You're just like, 1, 2, I had 50 and I have 49. Cool.
Yeah, it's one of those that you won't often lose to dice as much as you think you will. But there are some times when you might have made a really great play and you've done everything technically correct, and by even over the normal what you would expect, it still fails. Now, if I win in that way, you know, it depends on the severity of it, but you've got a choice. Do you rub it in your opponent's face, or do you go, that was a great play, and I genuinely think you should have killed that unit, you've got massively unlucky there. And if that is what changes the state of this game, then I'm truly sorry, because you've played this exceptionally well.
Yeah, I think there's a commiseration,
yeah.
right? I mean, it's part of that engagement with your opponent as well, because you're going to celebrate your good rolls together, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you made that 11-inch charge or whatever. And then you're also going to be like, man, I can't believe you missed that 4-inch charge. I mean, I'm imagining, yep, we got hands here. How many have failed a 4-inch charge? It's going to happen to every single one of us. And so, like you said, when you win, you're acknowledging, you know, like, man, you played fantastically. You played to the best of your ability. There's no shame in that.
Yeah, I mean, I always want to make sure that you enjoy the game that you've had with me, providing I'm also enjoying the game.
Of course.
And that's one of those things that I don't want any hard feeling that I'm going to rub it in your face if you lose, right? Because you're not going to want to play me again. Your happiness at this game is really important to me. So there are some people that I just will refuse to play because I know that I'm not going to enjoy the next 3 hours of my time. And it's not worth putting yourself through. Like, you pay a lot of money to come to events. Your ticket, your food, your hotel, the travel. You've spent time painting your models. You deserve a level of satisfaction and happiness from when you step up to the table. You don't owe your opponent the game. Now, that's my opinion. Some people will say different, but you don't owe your opponent that. Sure, they've come, but if their own attitude or decorum is the thing that's making you unhappy and it's then going to ruin the rest of your event, I'd rather not play that next 3 hours. And hopefully over time, people would realize, actually, I'm getting a lot of people refusing to play me. I probably should do something about that.
Some self-reflection, perhaps, because it's at that point, let's be honest, it's probably not the army they're playing against, it's the person.
Oh, for sure, yeah. Like there's loads of really strong armies out there, and sometimes you can get there in, you know, I've even walked up to the table before and somebody will go, oh, my list is better than yours. Or
It's a good opening salvo right there.
Or they'll say, oh, this is going to be
some psychological warfare.
this is going to be a tough matchup for you. And I'm like, okay, cool. It's just not the way you want to, like I said about, you might be nervous getting to the table, or whatever that is, you need to put that to one side and go, hey, James, great to meet you. I'm really looking forward to playing this game. Really looking forward to it. Your army looks awesome. What mission are we playing? Oh, purge the foe. Okay, cool. This will be good.
Yeah, and
just set the tone. And it amazes me how often somebody will say, oh, this will be a tough matchup for you. Yeah, I just beat Custodes, or I just beat them. And I'm like, okay. Like straight away, what you're now doing is projecting a negativity towards either my army or me or anything else. So you're now creating a rivalry. And I'm like, this is going to not be a great starting point of having a really good fun game with somebody.
By turn 3 or turn 4, you're probably sitting there pretty quiet. You know, you at this point, you just don't want to engage, right? Because that's the opening, and it's only going to build from there.
Yeah, and like you might also get the opposite. Oh man, your army's really, really good. Oh, I've lost this game. And straight away, that's also not going to create fun for either player. So I'll always try and say, hey, look, is there anything I can help with? You know, how do we make this game more enjoyable for you? But you can also be a good opponent by, if you're constantly taking certain lists in the game that are extremely difficult to deal with on the whole, and you've already got a little bit of a bad reputation of maybe not necessarily being the best opponent, you probably want to think your choices.
Probably.
So maybe you take a slightly understrength army, have it so that your opponent even enjoys playing against that interaction. So you somewhat need to either read the room a little bit of how things are going for you. But again, one of the things that I always do at the workshops, I always talk about, like, you should enable your opponent to be a good opponent from the beginning. So I would always say, what's the first thing that you do when you get to the table? You know, we do the interaction. Hey, James, nice to meet you. What mission are we playing? The next question is, what's your list? Right? Yep. And now James would go, oh, well, I've got this, I've got that, and I've got this, and that, you know, and then this does this, and that does that. And you're like, go through the whole army list. I mean, listen to somebody playing Admech. You're like, sorry, what? You get
it's literally binary at that point.
You get to that at the end of that list, and you're asleep. So I always say, like, the key thing is questioning. And on the workshop, we always go over, like, what are the top 10 questions you need to ask? Because equally, I don't want to take up, if we've got 3 hours, I don't want to spend 30 minutes asking you questions. Like, that's such a huge waste of time. But what I do need to do is know the important questions that I need to ask. So a lot of people go, oh, can you advance in charge?
It's a good question.
Or they'll even say, do you have a stratagem that allows you to advance in charge? Now, I could just say no.
It's a bit rubbish.
Because I don't. I don't have a stratagem that allows me to advance in charge. But I do have a unit that does allow me to do it, though. So if I wanted to, I'm actually telling the truth by saying, no, I don't have a stratagem that allows me to advance in charge. And it could just stop there. Obviously, I'm not going to do that because that's not what a good opponent would do. Again, we go back to how much am I going to help my opponent? Well, I'm going to help them at the start, fill in those blank areas, right? So what I would always say, instead of a question like, can you advance in charge? I would say, hey, can you increase your threat range by any way, either in the charge phase or in the shooting phase? So now you've got that's a really open question where I'm now expecting somebody to say, oh, yeah, well, this unit's got assault. I've got an enhancement on this unit that allows me to advance in charge, or I've got a stratagem that means I can put it on this unit to get +2 move, +2 advance, +2 charge. I'm like, okay, great. I understand now where all the elements of increasing threat range, because it's threat range is what I'm worried about. That is the big thing, is threat range, because when we come to the game, we start to use measurements, and now I can start to think about the way I'm going to, strategize my army. But just asking a very, very, very bespoke question isn't going to give me all the information I need, right? So the layering of questions really big. So I would always go, right, what's your army rule? Thanks for letting me know. And also never assume as well. Never assume somebody knows your army. Just because you're playing Space Marines or Tyranids or whatever else, you know what it does, but your opponent might not. No matter how good of a player they might be, it's just common courtesy to go, hey, is there anything you need to know? Would you like me to quickly walk through the basics? And I apologize if I'm, teaching you to suck eggs.
Yeah, well,
Right.
and you have the people too, where I've often seen it where the question comes up like, have you played Space Wolves before? And even if they tell me yes, I'm going to go over and refresh. I'm going to be like, all right, well, this is my detachment, which to remind you is I get lethal hits on this, this, and this or something. Because again, to your point, you can't just assume that they have this encyclopedic information in their head.
And I always say, hey, look, do you mind running me through this? Treat me like I'm stupid. Well, I mean, I am, so it's obviously a nice, easy, I'm being honest. But that way then there's no like, I've had it before, go, oh, Steve, I just thought you knew that. Well, there's 27 different factions, and if there's 27 different factions and every faction has 5 different detachments at least, then...
And then you add the enhancements and then the strategy. Yeah, you're getting up a few numbers.
I can't remember that. Yeah, sure, I work in this game, but I don't have that level of memory recall, right? So, again, that's where we really want to be open with those. What are those 10 most important questions you need to ask? And then also have that discussion around, like, what is intent? So intent is you declare it at the time you do it. You don't declare it retrospectively.
Yep.
Because it wasn't your intent. It's your intent now. You've seen more information. You need to eat that. Own that mistake. If you failed to communicate that it was your intent to be an inch away from the wall, that's your mistake.
That's a do you mind?
Yeah, and then now all of a sudden I'm like, well, I've actually just moved my units like this, and I set up my previous turn because of it. So now what? Now what do we do?
Exactly. Well, and kind of building off that, so again, at this point, we've talked about, the skills supporting sportsmanship. We've talked about, being a good sport when you do win, lose, and, changing of the state of the game. I mean, when you do get to, how do you handle, because I mean, we're talking about the funness of the game as well. You want to be a competitor, you want to play well, but how do you handle, someone conceding? If you're in the seat of, okay, they have 1 unit left. At this point, there's really not much they can do in the game. How do you handle navigating that, or vice versa?
Okay, so never, ever, ever ask your opponent to concede.
Yeah.
That is...
unsportsmanlike, maybe?
Even if you're winning the game dramatically, never say to your opponent, oh, look, I think you should concede, we're short of time, or whatever. That's just not cool. Now, if I can visually see your demeanor has completely changed over the course of this game, you started off bubbly, happy, fun, and now you're like sat there like basically bored. That's not me, regardless of the result or the score. I'd be like, James, you're doing all right, by the way.
Yeah, checking in.
Just check in with you, and you'd be like, if you go, well, just kind of rolling dice for the sake of it, I'd be like, look, we don't have to play anymore if you don't want. We can total up the score. We can call it here. I'm totally cool with that. It's up to you.
Yeah, because it can be a varying amount of factors, right? It could be you're worried, you want to make sure that your opponent's having a good time, but also, as we've all been in the tournament, we've all played those long games. It's physically and mentally exhausting. They could just have a headache. They could be tired, just like, do you need some water?
Like, I really struggle playing on low tables because I get back injuries. So sometimes I just get really aggravated because I'm in pain because of my back. And I don't want to play the game. It's not because I'm not enjoying the game with my opponent. I just don't want to be stood up anymore, bent over a table moving because I'm in physical pain. But sometimes I'm not going to sit there and necessarily ask my opponent to concede. And I'm also I'm going to let my opponent play through their game if they want, right? But equally, I'm expecting my opponent to read the signs of what's going on. Because if you really are enjoying your game, and I'm not, then we've got two options here. You could either go, hey, Steve, look, how you getting on? And I'll be like, James, I'm really struggling, actually. Do you mind if we just... I appreciate if you really want to roll this out, I'll 100% do that. But do you mind if we just total up the scores now? You're 100% going to get the win, but I'm in a bit of pain, or the game's been pretty rough, or I'm just not being a good opponent. Do you mind if we just call it a hit? And you'd be like, 100%. And I think we need to respect that, is that, yeah, we sign up for these weekends and you've got 6 games of Warhammer. You shouldn't expect to play every single minute of that with your opponent, because I believe that your opponent's happiness should be equally as important as your own.
Yeah.
And as soon as one of you's not enjoying the game, what are we doing?
Yeah.
What is the point now? Because we're not you don't get £1 million because you win this event. This is not a game or a sport where there's that level of remuneration on the line.
High stakes.
Exactly. Because I'd much rather walk away from a game knowing, oh, do you know what? I hope really next time we play, it's different. Maybe it's like they weren't feeling well or whatever else, right? And like a great experience I had was I rocked up to the table at Coventry a couple of years ago, and I said to my opponent, hey, look, I'm really sorry, but I actually need to concede. I need to go. I need to drop from the event. And they said, oh, why? I said, well, I've got a flat tire. That morning I woke up, I've got a massive nail or screw in my tire, car's flat, and I was like, I need to get this sorted, right? I need to get it to a garage, everything. He said, and I said, look, I've got the AA, whatever, I like roadside people coming out to see me at 10 o'clock, is when the round started. And he said, well, look, Steve, I really want to play you. And I'm like, oh, damn, what do I do now? I was like, okay. Well, let me go and speak to the roadside guy at 10 and see what he says. If he can fix it, then cool. I said, well, let's make sure we use a clock, though, because I don't want you to clock. I don't want us to clock out because it's my fault. I've got a fault. I'm the one with the flat tire here. Anyway, he was like, okay, cool. Put the clock down. I ran out, spoke to the AA man for about 10 minutes. He was like, we need to get it to a garage. I was like, okay, cool. So I ran back to my opponent. I said, look, I need about half an hour. I need to get my car to a garage and I need to run back. Is that okay? And he was like, Steve, I want to play you. Let's get this game done. We'll just leave the clock on. I was like, okay, cool. So anyway, drove to the garage, emptied my car with all my valuable camera stuff, ran back to the venue. Clock was on me. We still finished the game in time, and I did actually manage to get the win. And my opponent, I went over to the judges. I saw Zach, and I said, look, that's my most sporting player right there. He enabled me to carry on in the game, and he could have just easily took the win for his own win record, but he didn't. He wanted to play me. So for me, that showed his level of being able to adapt, and also I could appreciate that what he wanted was to play me. So we both appreciated each other's happiness in this game, and we ended up having a great game, and I'd love to play him again.
With mutual respect.
Exactly. And there was no ill feeling that I got the win and I'd already said at the start I was going to concede because of it. Nothing like that whatsoever. So again, I think we always need to be mindful of our opponent's actual demeanor, happiness, and again, if you win really badly, just say, hey, look, there was a couple of things I think you played really, really well on, and then they'll naturally go, oh, what do you think I could improve on? Well, I don't know if deploying there was maybe the best idea. I was more worried if you'd have deployed it over here. And they'll go, oh, thanks, I appreciate that, Steve. But I didn't lead with that. I didn't go with the, oh, James, mate, why'd you deploy it over there? He's such an idiot.
It's true. And then I usually just defend it. I'm just like, it's fine.
But if I lead with, here's what you did well, I'm giving you the opening to ask that question if you wanted that feedback. If you don't ask me. That's totally cool.
Yeah.
But you just set that sort of tone, right, for the rest of the game. And I think one of the other biggest issues I think we get is when you should call a judge.
Absolutely. Because, I mean, for good and for bad, right? Because it can be, I think people often associate calling a judge with a negative experience. You're calling a judge for a reason because opponent's being difficult, so they're not being forthcoming. But there's a way to make that a positive interaction, right? It's a clarification.
Yeah, exactly that. So I always say at the start of the game, all I want to do is seek the truth. That's all I care about is the truth. So the truth is either in the rule book or it's going to be with the judge. Hopefully one of those two things is going to be correct. Now, the judge might not necessarily be correct either. The judge could make a wrong call, but if I can present the judge with the information from the rule book and they make a ruling, then I'm going to 100% play it like that for the rest of the event, because that is now the new truth of what this event should look like. The important thing is consistency. So there's a difference between being challenging and having conflict. And again, how you structure this is really important, because if you do something, James, and I'm not happy with it, or maybe I think it just sounds like a little bit too good to be true, I've got two ways of doing this. I mean, I was at an LVO, not last January, the January before.
Yeah, I think it was 2 years.
Yeah. I said, hey, I'm really sorry. Do you mind if we check the movement on something? Because I think the ruling is that when you move a model, a vehicle, this is before the pivot came in, you have to measure around that ruin, right? So you measure like 6 inches to clear it one side, then you can move it another 6 inches forward, but you need to completely clear the ruin, right? And he went, incorrect. I was like, okay.
Yeah, this was 2 years ago, because it wasn't even just saying incorrect, it was incorrect.
Yeah, so you presented me now with a problem. I'm like, you're refusing to take on my, hey, do you mind if we check this? So now I need to call a judge, okay? So this is more of a, I'm now going to let the judge remove that element of conflict between us and let them make the decision on how this interpretation should be made. And when you do call a judge, I'm not going to say, oh, judge, this is what this happens, right?
Yeah, no, you're not. It's because, I mean, that's another skill within itself, is you're asking the judge for clarification, right? But you're not there, you're not a lawyer, you're not there to make an argument for yourself.
No, you're trying to just say, hey, ref, do you mind if we get a judge call? This was the situation. The model started its move here. It moves 12. How far can it move in this direction? I'm not saying whether its current end place or new place is right or wrong. I'm just saying, where can it end up?
You're presenting it neutrally.
And then they'll say, well, it takes 6 inches to clear the ruin and 6 inches forward. Okay, thanks, ref. So I've let the ref or the judge there remove any conflict if it starts to rise. So I feel like challenges are 100% encouraged, because if you don't challenge your opponent when you feel like the rules are getting a little bit too good to be true for them, you should challenge that, right? We've all been there where we've read a stratagem, and then it's maybe that failure to read the last line where it says, but not for this unit. And you're like, I don't think you can do that. That sounds really good. Yeah, you definitely can. Because when we read things, we read it with our like army tinted rose glasses on, right? Like, yeah, I've got this combo and it does this and it does that. And because we want that to be the case. We want it to be exciting. We want it to be really cool, but we do need to read the entire stratagem.
And unfortunately, we might have been playing it that way from the get-go, and it happens. Again, there's 500 plus players over there that are probably not having a perfect game of 40K. It's okay. You can.
Well, also, if somebody does challenge you, and now you need to admit that you're not only getting it wrong right now, but you've also got it wrong in all your previous games and all the ones before that. This is a hard pill for somebody to swallow right now. So straight away, they're going to be defensive. They're going to be, no, trust me. That's how it works. Whereas I would go, and I had this at Worlds 2 years ago. I said to my opponent, I've got an army rule. I get to re-roll a hit or a wound or a damage.
Yeah.
And he went, that's only on vehicles though, right? And I went, if it is, I need to drop in concede from the tournament, because I've been playing it as if it affects every unit. Can we just double check this? And he said, no, I'd like to. So got the rulebook out. Yeah, it's any unit. It just says any Astartes unit, whatever. And I was like, whew. And he said to me, Steve, I really appreciate that, because what you did straight away was you said what you were going to do before we even knew whether you're right or wrong. So I already laid the cards out of, if I'm wrong here, I've cheated all my previous opponents and I need to eat that. Yeah, I've paid to go to Worlds, I've paid for my flights, I've paid for my accommodations, but that is so much more important for me to walk away feeling completely that I dealt my own I'd rather deal my own fate than somebody else feeling like they have to. And I think if a lot of people took a lot more ownership of that, then we'd be in a much better place of the game, because it's very difficult to actually catch somebody cheating. And I mean deliberately cheating, because there's a big difference between, when I used to be coaching for fitness and nutrition, right? You've got adherence. So they're trying to do something. So let's say a certain rule, like hit this many calories every day, right? They genuinely want to try and do that because they want the result of weight loss or muscle gain. So you've got this thing of, are they adherent or are they non-adherent? So are they, yes, playing by the rules, or are they not playing by the rules? But then the next classification of that is, did they do it intentionally or did they do it accidentally? And that's the really hard thing to determine, because when it comes to tracking your food and your calories, then yeah, it can be really difficult to scan the wrong barcode, to enter in the wrong weight. Maybe you weighed a pre-cook or whatever, and it's really difficult. So there's a lot of inaccuracy with tracking of calories. But when it comes to this game, yeah, there's, you know, the right and the wrong side of the rules, right? But then there's also these other elements as well, which we can sometimes play incorrectly. And I've certainly been there. I've played things wrong, and I felt terrible after. But it wasn't intentional. So it's really difficult to catch somebody deliberately cheating, and then how you actually go around punishing that is really challenging as well. And I don't know, I've thought about it for a long time, the best way to deal with it for an event perspective. And it is very difficult. I genuinely feel for TOs that are put in that position, because it's these like big profile players or games that happen, and all of a sudden, because it's not accepted, that like we see on a sporting arena where I'll see, you know, James makes a foul, I see James get the red card, I see James get sent off, the other team get the penalty, they get the goal. We all feel like we've all had redemption, right? We think, yeah, okay, that was dealt with appropriately. We're not there going to be on the internet trying sending James death threats like he's toxic, he's this, that. And at the end, I'm still going to shake his hand, even if he fouled me, because that's what happens in competitive sport. But because we don't see that in the game, we just take to Reddit and all these other places, and then all of a sudden a villain's made out of something that they may have intentionally done or not. And it's so difficult to do that. And I feel like if players can start to hold themselves more accountable to truly want to win because they were the better player, rather than wanting to win because they're trying to lift a medal or win a certain amount of ITC points or whatever else. So I think it becomes an ownership on the players. But I would love to see much, much tougher, visually tougher restrictions being played on players. Because if it happens there and then, and we're very used to it, then it's fine. Yeah, it's going to sting in the first few times you see someone get a red card or a yellow card. But as it becomes more acceptable and more, I think, the norm for people to get carded, then great. I think that's would be the positive move forward. But that's just my opinion.
Well, I'm talking about the self-ownership, you know, the self-respect on that side of things. When you see someone who does make a mistake, because we have varying degrees of, like you said, it's hard to catch someone just adamantly cheating. And we've all picked up, you know, you're hitting on threes, you picked up a 2. It's a degree, it's a smaller degree. And then you have someone where you've seen loaded dice, intentionally obscuring all their roles, stuff like that. But when we all take our own personal responsibility over it, it makes it a lot easier for us, right? Because now we're self-reporting ourselves, just like, I made a mistake, you said.
We're all going to slightly, every single one of you here has over-moved a model, guaranteed. You all do it. We all want the best for ourselves, right? Want to make that charge that as easy as we can be. So I would expect you to go, hey, Steve, can I help you measure that out? And I'll be like, yeah, 100%. Please help me. Let's get this correct, right? Maybe we're tight at time. You know I'm trying to finish my game. I want you to finish your game. So help me. Let's lift the terrain up. Let's see what the distance is before we move any model. And then if, though, you're trying to help somebody and they continually push the envelope. Recently I played someone, I won't mention any names, but they're like, oh, I'm going to advance this unit. They roll the dice, move the model, and they went, oh, I don't actually want to advance because I want to shoot. And I was like, okay, but you've rolled the dice. They're like, yeah, but I don't want to shoot. I want to shoot though. I'm like, okay. What do you do in that situation?
The lose-lose situation you had referenced earlier. You're putting your opponent in a lose-lose.
100%. Or they've moved a model and they're like, oh, I want to shoot here. And I'm like, but you know you can't, right? Because you're not wholly in the terrain. Oh, right, well, I could just push it a bit more. Yeah, but did you have the movement to do that? Oh, yeah, easily. But you also tried to set it up over here earlier, and you tried to set up in a place in your movement phase where it was still engagement range with my models. So we don't actually know its original position, and now you just want to move it a bit more? Like, come on, this is a bit of a problem. So how do you deal with that? Well, the key thing is to report that to a judge.
Of course.
You now need to start a dialogue of bad behavior. So if my opponent had been like, Steve, do you know what? I'm so sorry. I don't actually know where I originally was. Yeah, let's say I can't shoot. I'm like, yeah, James, no problem.
Yep.
I can see that James was either like respectful of me or not trying to push the boundaries of what he can get away with. Or he should have said, you know, let's say you're the one that does this advance roll. You go, do you know what, Steve? You're right. I rolled the dice. Totally cool. I'm not going to shoot that unit.
Easy enough.
Yeah. Take the hit, right? Because next time we play, I'm going to want to play you. Because next time we play, if you don't do that, I'm now going to be a very, very different opponent. Because I now need to watch every single thing you do in order to keep you to the letter of the game, right?
On top of your mental gymnastics of keeping track of your rules and your movement and your stuff, now you're having to keep track of somebody else's rules and their movement. And
that's not fun. That's not a fun game for anyone. So, again, it's like one of those things where you often see this a lot and they'll go, oh, I meant to do this. And I genuinely think the best answer is, okay, cool. Yeah, you probably should have actually. Yeah, that'd been a good move.
Yep.
And then if they keep pressing it and go, oh, well, you know, do you mind if I do this instead? I'm like, well, have you seen information? Oh, yeah, I have, yeah. Can we 100% guarantee you would have made that decision if you wouldn't have seen this? Is there any time a possibility when you wouldn't have done that? And then just let your words fall. Just take a minute, let them fall, and then see what they say. Because now they need to really think about what their response is going to be. And if they would have said, actually, do you know what, Steve? Yeah, you're right, I might not have played it if it would have been this. Okay, cool. I'm putting the ownership on them now to be a good opponent, but I'm letting them do it. Now, there's a time I played round one at LGT, and my opponent split-fired. He was playing Eldar, and he shot Lycus' unit, which gives you critical hits on 5s, right? So he shot a unit, decided to split fire, resolved the first shots from the first few guys somewhere, and he went, oh no. I was like, okay, what? And he was like, oh, no, don't worry about it. And I went, you wanted to play the sustain 6 stratagem, right? And he went, yeah. And bear in mind, I'm looking at this. This is a big Fugues over there with his full unit of Fire Dragons. I'm like, yeah, this is gonna nuke my entire unit of Custodes. I'm literally there thinking, how do I want this to play out? Do I want to lose my unit of Custodes? No, I don't. But equally, I want my opponent to have a good game. I said, look, it was obvious you wanted to play the stratagem. Please play the stratagem. You're not going to get it for the unit that you've just shot because you've seen the information, but you will get it for where you really want it, for where those critical hits of 5s are, yeah? So that's that middle ground. And then he proceeds to roll all 5s and 6s, and I'm like, I've just been punished. But anyway, we had a great game. Right?
Absolutely.
And I wouldn't want to win because I didn't do that, you know?
Yeah, you don't want to win in that because, again, it creates that bad feeling. But, you know, we've covered a lot of deep, you know, heavier topics. But, you know, we're here. We're at the Las Vegas Open. You've come multiple times now at this point to the Las Vegas Open. What does the Las Vegas Open mean to you?
For me, it's like, well, obviously every year I play. And this is the first year I didn't play. I always run the workshop, I play in the champs, and I've always done that. And what it means to me is the community, the people that we travel with, getting to see yourself that I don't get to see very often, and Nick Keever over there, I get to see him, and the rest of the team that we travel with, going out in the evening, go to our favorite places, seeing all the people that I never get to see, I've realized means so much more to me than actually playing. And I can never necessarily be my best opponent and the best version of myself when I'm a little bit jet lagged. I'm trying to play this game. People are coming up to me saying, hey, Steve, I love your content or whatever. I want to give those people that time. And I've still found this experience just as rewarding for me, sitting here and talking to guests and coaching my first tournament. And I'm still getting the same amount of satisfaction from the LVO, and I'm not even playing. And that was why I really wanted to set up the live lounge, was because I wanted a place for people to experience the LVO that might not necessarily want to play, or they might want to play a little bit and then want to do other things, because playing 2 days of 40K isn't for everybody. Sometimes 1 day's enough, but you still want to play something. You still enjoy this hobby. You might make a friend and have a great couple of games. Perfect. Then you've got other things to do. So I love the new venue. I think it's absolutely awesome. I really like it. I think it's situated in a great place. It's nice and open, airy. There's loads of space around all the tables. The vendors hall look great. So for me, LVO is a really special place. And I absolutely love it. And that's why I've been so passionate about building my first tournament here for the very first time. The amount of work I've had to do just to get this whole thing off the ground. I was designing the banners at Sunday night, midnight. At Sunday, I went home and tested every single lead for every single camera. Took me about 6 hours to pack to make sure I did a dry run setup of all the cameras here to make sure that when I got here, I knew everything worked, writing all the descriptions, the YouTube, everything. It was all worth it. And yeah, I genuinely love the LVO.
Well, I think we can all say that we genuinely appreciate you doing that and going through that, because we're getting that experience. We're getting the live lounge experiences, the interviews with, like you said, that wider community. And it's the wider community that we don't see every day that gather here. They gather at the Las Vegas Open. That's where they come out, and every single one of them, sometimes they're non-negotiable, right?
Yeah.
That's the one they're going to make it to. No matter what happens, I'll be in Las Vegas.
Come to the LVO, definitely.
Absolutely.
Should we take some questions?
Let's take some questions. What do we got on the digital side?
Hobbsy, do you mind running people around with
with the microphone there?
With the microphone?
I have a microphone.
Yeah, anyone out in the audience,
Any
do you have a
questions?
question? Hold your hand up. Hold it nice and close as you can, uncomfortably.
The last game I played today, I realized I made a mistake.
Oh, bring it a little bit closer for us. There you go.
There we go. I realized I made a mistake on my feel no pains. Still thinking in my head that Great and Clean One had a 4-up feel no pain.
Yep.
I caught that early on, and it was closer towards the end of the game, and we were just trying to wrap it up. And he pulled Assassination, so I just gave him Assassination at the end. And he was trying to fight me for it. He was like, don't drop it off.
Yeah.
What do you do in that situation when you're trying to be like
you realized you made mistakes with your feel no pains. You had a better feel no pain.
Mm-hmm.
Your opponent drew Assassination and was just trying to, give it to you. But
So quick question. What did you think it was?
I saw it with a 4-up, like the old Index. It was my first time running.
And is it a
Caliban.
5-up?
It's a 6-up.
It's a 6-up?
Yeah.
So it was more, you played it better for yourself than...
I played it better for myself. It was for the friendly. I caught it on
And then
later in
did
the
you
day.
offer them the Assassinate?
I gave him the Assassinate at the end.
Okay, so, I think what you've done there is you recognized it.
Yeah.
And you're allowing your opponent to just, hey, look, I'm really sorry. You've drew Assassinate. Yeah, you 100% kill me. Put yourself in the very worst position possible.
Yeah.
And then if your opponent goes, hey, look, no, don't worry about it. It wouldn't have made a difference. Let's just carry on. At least that way you can walk away from that game feeling guilt-free.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you felt like it was significant and you give them the Assassinate or whatever they needed to score, and they go, yeah, no, I appreciate that, then you've both realized that, yeah, that is a mistake, it's significant, but you should go, and I think that people need to do this more, go further than what is fair in order to detriment yourself because you were the one that made the mistake, right?
Right.
I think what a lot of people do is, I've had this in the past where somebody's, got a rule completely wrong, and I've said, hey, look, that actually wasn't the right thing. You got that really wrong. And they'll go, it didn't make much difference, though. That's not for you to determine.
Right. I gave him the assassination regardless.
You did exactly the right thing.
Okay.
100% you did the right thing. You gave them the points, so you did exactly the right thing. Yeah. If you just said, oh, no, it wouldn't have made much difference anyway. I pretty much rolled 6s. You're now then trying to give yourself an easy way out, but you haven't done that. You've admitted it. You've given them the points. Take the model off the table. Next time you play, it's a 6-up, not a 4-up. Done.
Exactly.
And then your conscience is clear, right?
Yeah.
That's a great question.
And to be fair, you walked away a better opponent for that. And that's the important part, right? The growth. So, very well done. Yeah. Any other questions out there? Oh, we got one right down there. Again, hold it up nice and close, uncomfortably.
Hey, Phil.
Thank you very much. So, I'm actually a tournament organizer myself. And one of the main things that I like to really practice in my general store is just kind of getting the newer players in and getting them into games. But a lot of the issue that I have is that I have a very vast pool of very experienced players. And a lot of these newer players are very intimidated to get games in with these newer experienced players. And I understand, like you guys were talking about the discussion of, make sure that all the rules are out on the table right when you get started in the game. And, a lot of the experienced players, they come in and they kind of already expect them to have just a general knowledge of the basic army, the detachments, their abilities, enhancements, etc. And I really don't feel very comfortable, being a backseat gamer, kind of sitting on the end and trying to really help that new player. So I'm just wondering, is there a way to mitigate maybe the potential of backseat gaming and, actually be there and still be a good TO for these new players against experienced opponents without the experienced player feeling like they just have a second person in their back pocket?
Are they in a tournament setting?
They are not. They're in a very friendly setting. And
just like a casual game?
Yes, very.
So I think this depends, right? Because you are going to get those players that just want to win. And I'm not saying all veteran players are like that. Absolutely not. In fact, some of the best players I know are also the most gracious. So it really depends on the types of players. And I think if I was you as a TO, you kind of know who those players are that have the patience, the willingness to grow the community, the ability to actually be forthcoming in teaching as you play. And I would, where I would, if I was you, I would say, hey, look, James stepped in yesterday to play one of our guys here, and this is their first ever tournament they've ever played in, the people behind you. James stepped in, and Jared, this guy, he said, look, that was the most valuable thing I've ever done, is having a whole game with James. So now, the other thing you also need to respect, though, is that the more senior competitive players, what are they going to get from that experience? So if they don't find teaching rewarding, then they're getting nothing from that time because their opponent is not going to give them a good game. And that's what they're looking for, that mental challenge. So I think it's about being open and honest rather than just throwing people at each other and hoping just because they're playing Warhammer, they're going to have a fun game. It's knowing, hey, look, maybe you've got someone really serious there, cutting edge competitive player, to go, hey, when you come to the club, what are you looking for? Well, I'm looking for really tough games. Okay, no problem. Do you mind coaching somebody? It's not really my thing. Okay, cool, no worries.
In those scenarios, that's when I usually just say, hey, then you know what? I'll get a game in with you.
Yeah, perfect.
Which is exactly what you should do.
Because I love coaching. I don't know why, but yeah, I just really enjoy it. So I get a lot of satisfaction of seeing improvement from people. One of the awards that we've got for everybody here at the tournament, we don't have a first place trophy. We've got a most improved, though.
I think that's a great idea. I think it's an excellent idea.
Yeah, so it's about what do you find valuable in making sure all your community members also, but you also might get somebody that's a beginner or less experienced or less good, and they go, hey, I don't mind just completely losing, but I want the experience of playing against that person to see how they play. And if that's the case, then they're also on the same page as well. And then you just, as a TO, get, hey, look, so-and-so would really like to play you. Do you mind? They are going to be quite new. It's not going to be the toughest game for you, but maybe bring a softer list. Maybe try out some units you haven't tried yet. Okay, yeah, cool. I'll do that. I'm up for it. So, yeah, just have that dialogue before about what they all want to get from it.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
No worries.
Excellent question. Excellent question. Any other questions in the audience?
What is your favorite flavor of paint?
He didn't even speak loud enough for me to hear.
What's my favorite flavor paint? We had this yesterday.
Yeah, you did this.
Blanched cherry.
Consistency.
Yeah, consistency is important in the flavor of paint. So that's fair. That's fair. Any questions? All right, we got one. No? One last opportunity. Come on. It can be anything. Favorite color.
What's your question? Okay, well, if that's all the questions, James, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for taking the time, Stephen. And of course, yes, thank you very much, guys, for coming and listening, participating. We really appreciate it. What do we have coming up next?
So in half an hour, I'm speaking with Mr. Bones, and we're going to be talking all things lore, how to get into the lore of the game of Warhammer, how do we make it a little bit more accessible, and finding the fun things about it. So that's going to be coming up at 1:30, and then I've got 1:30, 2:30, 3 o'clock. I've got Dan Osborne. We're going to be how to paint an entire army without burning out. That's going to be a pretty good one.
It's a good one. That's
and
a really
then
good one.
at the end of the day, we're finishing off. I'm speaking with Jake from Frontline Gaming, and we're going to be talking how do you actually put on an event this size, the magnitude, where Frontline have come from, their extremely humble beginnings. I heard for the very first time yesterday that the very first event that they ran was in literally a shepherd's hut. So to see it become such a pillar of the community and, you know, provide so much entertainment for all, I think is amazing. So I'm looking forward to that at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Stephen, thank you again. As
Thank you
always,
very much,
it's
sir.
always great to see you. And again, thank you to all those who tuned in. And we'll see you very shortly.
See you later. Thanks, Opti.